It was raining that evening, the kind of steady, cold rain that makes the world feel empty. The road stretched endlessly ahead, illuminated only by the soft glow of Daniel Carter's headlights. Emily Carter sat quietly in the passenger seat until something caught her eye. At first, it looked like debris, something discarded and forgotten, but as they drew closer, she leaned forward, her voice tightening as she said, "Daniel, slow down." Daniel Carter sighed, irritation creeping into his tone as he tapped the brakes. "What is it now, Emily?" But she didn't answer right away. She was staring at the side of the road, her eyes locked on a small, trembling shape barely visible through the rain. "It's a dog," Emily Carter whispered, her voice filled with concern. "Daniel, it's still alive." Carter glanced over briefly before shaking his head. "Emily, leave it. That thing is already gone." His voice was firm, dismissive, as if the decision had already been made. But Emily Carter didn't move. She opened the door, ignoring the rain soaking through her clothes as she stepped out into the darkness. "Emily, don't," Daniel Carter called out, his patience thinning, but she was already kneeling beside the dog. Up close, it was worse than she imagined. The dog was thin, its ribs visible beneath its fur, patches of skin irritated and raw, its breathing shallow and uneven. It trembled violently, too weak to even lift its head properly. Hey, it's okay," Emily Carter murmured, her hands gentle as she reached out. The dog flinched at first, then slowly relaxed as if it had no strength left to resist. "Emily, we're not bringing that thing into the car," Daniel Carter said, stepping out reluctantly, his voice sharper now. But Emily Carter looked up at him, her expression firm in a way he rarely saw. "Daniel, he's still breathing. I'm not leaving him here to die." There was a pause, the rain filling the silence between them. Daniel Carter ran a hand over his face, frustration clear. "You don't even know if it'll survive the night," he muttered. Emily Carter held the dog closer, shielding it from the rain. "Then at least it won't die alone." That was the moment everything changed, even if Daniel Carter didn't realize it yet. Bringing Max home wasn't a decision Daniel Carter agreed with, it was one he tolerated. He kept his distance as Emily Carter carried the fragile dog inside, placing him gently on a blanket near the fireplace. The warmth of the room contrasted sharply with the cold night outside, but Daniel Carter stood near the doorway, arms crossed, watching with quiet disapproval. "You're getting attached already," he said flatly. Emily Carter didn't look up. "He needs help, Daniel." But to Daniel, the dog wasn't something to care about. The dog was an inconvenience, a disruption to the order he valued. As Emily cleaned the dog's wounds and offered him water, Daniel turned away, already deciding that whatever happened next had nothing to do with him. Later that night, as the house fell quiet, Emily sat beside the dog, her voice soft as she said, "You're going to be okay." She paused for a moment, studying him, then added, "I think I'll call you Max." The name felt simple, familiar, grounding. From across the room, Daniel scoffed lightly. "Don't expect me to," he said without looking at her. Emily didn't respond, but the silence that followed said enough. To her, Max was already more than a stray. To Daniel, Max didn't even deserve a name. Days turned into weeks, and the divide between Emily and Daniel became clearer. When Emily was around, Daniel ignored Max entirely, moving through the house as if the dog didn't exist. But when she left, something shifted. It wasn't obvious at first, not the kind of behavior that would immediately raise concern. It started small. A missed feeding, a door left closed just a little too long, Max sitting outside longer than necessary, his body pressed against the cold ground as he waited to be let back in. Daniel never raised his voice, never did anything that would seem extreme, but the message was clear in every action. Max wasn't welcome. Despite this, Max stayed close. He followed Daniel from room to room, wagging his tail, always keeping a careful distance, always watching. If Daniel sat down, Max would settle nearby, his eyes fixed on him with quiet attention. But every movement from Daniel made him flinch. a subtle reaction that revealed more than words ever could. "Useless animal," Daniel Carter muttered one afternoon as Max lingered near him. The words were sharp, dismissive, but Max didn't move away. Instead, he stayed, as if hoping that one day the tone would change. Emily noticed pieces of it, small inconsistencies she couldn't fully explain. "He seems nervous around you," she said one evening, her voice thoughtful. Daniel shrugged. "It's a stray, Emily. It's not exactly trained." She nodded slowly, but something didn't sit right. Still, she trusted Daniel, and that trust allowed the quiet tension to continue unnoticed. When Max's condition didn't improve as quickly as expected, Emily insisted on taking him to the vet. The cost wasn't small, and Daniel didn't hide his frustration. "You're spending money on something that won't last," he said bluntly. Emily met his gaze, her expression steady. "He deserves a chance." The surgery was risky, and for a while it seemed like Daniel might be right. But Max pulled through, his body weak but alive. "Against all odds, he made it," the veterinarian said with a small smile. Emily felt relief wash over her, but Daniel remained quiet, his reaction unreadable. The night everything changed started like any other. Daniel drove to pick up Emily from the vet. Max just had a major surgery. The road quiet beneath the dim glow of streetlights. When Emily got into the car, she smiled faintly. "Thanks for coming, Daniel," he nodded, keeping his focus on the road. In the backseat, Max shifted, letting out a soft sound. "He wanted to come," Emily said gently. Daniel hesitated and said, "Please, not again." It was a small moment, almost insignificant, but it didn't seem like Daniel was willing to warm up to Max. They decided to stop at a convenience store on the way home. The parking lot was nearly empty, the lights flickering slightly as they stepped inside. Daniel walked ahead, Emily close behind, and Max stayed near Daniel's side. At first, everything seemed normal, but then Max's behavior changed. He stiffened, his body tense as he began to circle Daniel. A low sound escaped him, not loud but enough to draw attention. "What's wrong with you, Max?" Daniel asked, irritation returning in his voice, but Max wasn't looking at him. Max was staring past him. There was someone behind Daniel. On the ground, everybody, a guy on mask, shouted with aggression, holding a knife. Everyone trembled and wailed, including Daniel and Emily. These guys were there to rob the store. "Put all your money here now." One of the robbers yelled at the store attendant. "Please don't hurt me," the store attendant pleaded as her hands trembled. "Oh my God, I'm scared, Daniel," Emily said with a trembling voice. At the corner they hid. Daniel checks to count the guys and to see the situation in front. He looks at Emily. "It's okay. They are just 3 and they don't have guns. I can get us out of here," he said to her in a whisper filled with confidence and assurance as he stood up. Emily grabs his shirt. "Daniel, what are you doing? Don't go out there," Emily whispered in fear. "It's okay, I've got this," Daniel said as he removes her hand from his shirt. "Hey, you have no right to do this in my neighborhood," Daniel yelled at the robbers. "Get down," one of the robbers yelled, but Daniel did not listen. Max started barking. "Max, stop it, be quiet," Emily said with a scared whisper, her head buried on the ground. But Max didn't stop. He couldn't. In less than a second, everything changed. One of the robbers was behind Daniel, knife raised, aimed directly at Daniel's back. And before Daniel could even turn, Max moved. He jumped forward, placing himself between the blade and the man who had never truly accepted him. The impact was sudden, the sound sharp and final. Max collapsed almost instantly, his body hitting the ground as Emily Carter's scream filled the store. Daniel Carter turned too late, his mind struggling to catch up with what had just happened. Then police sirens was heard from few blocks away. One of the hostages had secretly called the police. "Police, let's move out," one of the robbers called out. They ran out. Daniel couldn't move. He dropped to his knees beside Max, his hands shaking as he tried to understand. "Max, Max," he said, his voice breaking for the first time. Emily Carter knelt beside him, tears streaming down her face. "Stay with us, Max, please," she whispered, her hands trembling as she held him. For a moment it felt like time slowed, every second stretching into something unbearable. Daniel carried Max, rushed out to the car as they drove off to the hospital. At the hospital, everything moved fast, but not fast enough. The staff rushed Max away, leaving Daniel and Emily standing there, suddenly still, surrounded by a silence that felt heavier than anything before. Daniel sat down slowly, his hands still trembling, his eyes fixed on the floor. Emily sat beside him, her hand gripping his tightly, both of them holding onto something neither of them could control anymore. Minutes passed, then more. Time lost its shape completely. Daniel leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his hands pressed together as if that alone could hold everything together. "He kept trying to warn me," he said quietly, his voice distant. Emily looked at him, her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't interrupt. "I didn't listen," he added, his voice breaking again, softer this time. "I told you not to go, Daniel," Emily said with trembling, teary voice. "I'm sorry," Daniel responded with regrets. "I can't lose Max," Emily said to him, her eyes pale. When the veterinarian finally walked in, the shift in the room was immediate. Emily jumped up from her seat with eagerness. The vet's expression was calm but heavy, the kind that says everything before a single word is spoken. Daniel felt his chest tighten, his breath shallow as he waited. "We did everything we could," the vet said gently, pausing just long enough for the words to settle. Daniel didn't respond right away. He nodded once, almost mechanically, as if his body was moving before his mind could catch up. Emily let out a quiet sob beside him, her hand covering her mouth as the weight of it all finally landed. Daniel stood there for a moment longer, then slowly walked past the vet, each step heavier than the last. He walked into the room where Max laid, each step heavier than the last. Max lay still, peaceful in a way that felt almost unfair. Daniel knelt beside him, his hand resting gently on his fur. "I didn't deserve you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. For the first time, he saw Max clearly, not as a burden, not as a problem, but as a life that had given everything without asking for anything in return. The dog Daniel called useless was the only reason he was still alive. The days that followed, the house felt different, quieter, heavier. Daniel found himself looking at the spaces Max used to occupy, remembering the way he would sit nearby, always watching, always waiting. He remembered the nights he left Max outside, cold and hungry, and how Max still waited by the door. And slowly the understanding settled in. Loyalty isn't something you earn after the fact. Sometimes it's given freely, even when it's not deserved. Max gave Daniel something he never gave back, and maybe that's the lesson that stays with us. Not every second chance comes with time to make things right. Sometimes it comes in a single moment, a choice made without hesitation, a sacrifice that can never be repaid. What matters is what we choose to do with it. And sometimes, the ones we value the least are the ones who give us the most. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos.